Sweet.
Okay. So it says this week's focus is on defining ethics as a group, exploring how ethics shape leadership, and how ethical behavior is reflected in public leadership. Does anybody want to talk?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I saw on the ethics chapter is that there are several challenges that come up for a leader involving ethics, and one of them was information management. And that's just that leaders tend to have more information than followers, and so therefore it can be difficult deciding whether to withhold truth or not, or situations can be kind of risky, like do I want to disclose all the truth first, or is it better just to hold that back? And so when I thought of this, I thought of The Office and how Michael Scott, like in the beginning, like season 1, withholds a lot of information from the staff about downsizing and downsizing, layoffs that were needing to happen, stuff like that. And so when it came time to when those decisions needed to be happening, the staff kind of blew up, and it's kind of a funny way they did it. But I think in a realistic sense, this could create a lot of tension in a workplace, disclosing this information just because you don't want to hurt people's feelings, or you don't want to look like the bad guy.
Yeah, I think transparency is definitely an issue, because it depends on, one, who your staff is and how they'll take it, and then two, you have an obligation to your higher-ups, so there might be some things that while you may want to tell your staff, you just can't, and it sucks just all the way around. At least that's kind of what I found, but then I also find it frustrating when my advisors or my bosses don't tell me all the information and kind of keep me in the dark. So yeah, that's definitely something that's, I feel like a case-by-case basis on what it is exactly that you need to disclose, or whether you should be transparent or not.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. I think you need to tell people as much as you can and be honest with them as much as possible without giving out all the goods, I guess. But that's kind of where you reach the ethical line, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like just having a higher up position, you hold more information than you need to tell, but it's nice for everyone to know.
Yeah.
I think that plays into also how you view your leader, because for me, I find it super frustrating when I can tell that someone's withholding information or that they won't disclose everything to me, and it's frustrating because it makes me feel like I'm not competent enough to handle that, or not trustworthy enough. So I think that's also hard because it draws a line in building relationships with your followers, because you want to be someone that's trustworthy and you want to be someone that people want to follow. And I feel like when people can tell that you're withholding information, then that just causes a big conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think some supervisors can even use information to gain power on employees, and so they might maybe drop hints here and there that they know something but not disclose it all, just to show who the power difference.
Yeah. I found another thing that was interesting too was the different components within the text. So the moral sensitivity, stuff like that, and especially moral judgment. So in my management class, we actually just talked about ethics, and we were given the situation. So it was this girl who was working in HR, and her boyfriend worked for the same company, and she got information that he was going to be fired the next day, and they'd been living together for 18 months. And so it was one of those situations, what do you do? Do you tell him and stay loyal to the relationship, or do you not tell him and stay loyal to your legal obligation as an HR representative? How do you handle the situation? And it was a case study, and in the end, she ended up not telling him, and it ended up ruining their relationship. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I know, for me personally, based off of that situation, if I had been living with my boyfriend for 18 months, then I would have told him. I would have ignored the work obligation, and I would have remained loyal to the intimate relationship. But what would you guys would have done in that situation?
Well, I think it's hard. It kind of depends if you really need the job or not. If you're, strictly dependent on the job, and maybe it's life or death in a way. If you're struggling to pay rent or get food on the table, you kind of have to put that into account. Mm-hmm. Or if you have something else maybe you could back up on, then maybe you go with the relationship side. It just kind of depends on your situation.
Yeah, I feel like that's just not really a good relationship if you're gonna pick like that over it.
If you're what?
If you're gonna pick work over it, then I like wouldn't consider it that good of a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it also depends on just like the guy himself. Like, do you think that he would take it well, or like, what he wouldn't, like that sort of stuff. So just knowing that partner as well can take
Yeah.
kind of that.
Yeah, so it's definitely like weird. It just like the moral judgment component definitely reminded me of that situation because it's just such a hard like if it was you personally, what would you do? And
Yeah.
everyone's answer is different, and everyone's answer is right in a sense. Like you have an obligation to both, so whichever you pick, I think you're in the right. But it's just picking whatever's better, and then like what are the consequences that come with each, which I found to be interesting. And then my professor in my management class also would like change it up. She's like, so what if you were just like casually dating this guy? Then would you tell him? Or what if you were only together 6 months or 2 years? Or like, what is it for you personally that like changes the scenario versus for other people,
Yeah. I felt like this chapter was really controversial just because, like, ethics it can go either way. It just depends on the kind of person you are, so.
Yeah.
Kind of situations you're in too. Like I was saying, if you're struggling for money or if you're struggling for different things, it kind of just depends what route you want to go.
Right.
So, what did you guys think of? So the book talks about Kant's categorical imperative, and he argues that individuals ought to do what is morally right, no matter what the consequences. What do you guys think of that approach compared to the text also talks about like utilitarianism, to where it's dependent on situations. So where do you guys think you land on that spectrum?
So the part of that Immanuel Kant section that I liked was, it was like, if you think that you'll do this again, then, or wait, hold on 1 second. It was like, sorry, I was just doing this today. It was like, if you would make this decision twice, then yeah, that's the one that you'd go with. And I've never actually really thought about a decision like that. But I feel like if you actually think about that, like, in perspective, then you actually, like, that is a good decision to make. Or, like, ethical to you.
What do you mean if you would do it twice? Can you explain that a
Like,
little?
hold on, I'm going to try to find it in the chapter. It just said that, like, if you would repeat your decision that you're making, like, again in the future, then that's, like, your ethical decision. Like, that's the right one for you.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that with the whole ethical thing that it is a case-by-case basis because I'm definitely one. I like to take all of the facts into account. So, like, it's not, for me, it's not just the action. It's also, like, what were previous actions before this one? Who is the person? What's the situation? How severe is it? How intense is it? If we take this action, what are the consequences versus doing this? So, like, for me, it's definitely not, like, every single time there is a right and there is a wrong, or like for all things there's one right and one wrong. I think that there can be many right things to do and many wrong things to do, and I think that the definition of right and wrong can change depending on who you're talking to, which personally, why I think ethics is just such a difficult subject to cover because
Yeah.
I think we all have a very similar moral compass, but I think once it gets down to like the nitty-gritty details, it changes for everyone.
Yeah, I think in a lot of job situations, like it's not always necessarily like a moral judgment, like off of like your moral compass. Sometimes it's just like, is this the best situation, or is it the worst situation? And so, like, there are times where it's like, you may have to do something that goes against like your beliefs, or possibly like if you have to, stomp on people or lie or cheat your way to the top. That may be some of where Kant's arguing. But, like, in normal situations where it's just like, is this the best solution or is it not, it doesn't really account for that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the, I'm not going to say this right, utilitarianism one, I thought that was interesting, doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Because that I don't really foresee, like, pertaining... I mean, I guess it could, because, I mean, as a business major, like, I try to think of all these in business terms, and I don't really foresee working in business as everything necessarily pertaining to the greatest good for the greatest number of people, but I did relate it, like, a lot to the military, because I feel like this is the way the military leads a lot, is that it's not what's going to be best for each individual soldier, but, like, what is best for the entire group. which I thought was kind of interesting in that aspect.
Yeah, that was really interesting. And it's interesting when you think about like, is that always like still the right thing to do? Like, was Hitler, like Hitler himself, like was he thinking of the better common good of making an Aryan race for the better of the human race? That's like, where in that line do you draw the, I don't know, where do you draw the line in that gray area?
Well, with Hitler, that's kind of hard. I mean, when you have mass murder of millions of people, then maybe that's where you've gone too far. But what he did was kind of amazing, having so many people follow his ideas and following his line of ethics and morals in a way.
Yeah. Well, does anyone have any last thoughts on the ethic chapter?
I don't.
No. Okay, let's go ahead and move on then to chapter 11.
So 7 too.
Do we have to like move it to a different video?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just combine them and then tell her in the email that we combine both weeks because we wouldn't be available next week.
Chapter 13, my bad. I just did chapter 11.
Yeah, chapter 13.
Okay, so the prompt says, please discuss ways that you believe organizations can prepare leaders at all levels to respond in a crisis. There's 10 different types of crisis. You do not need to address all 10, but instead focus on crises that are likely to impact your current workplace or the career you hope to obtain.
Okay. So, which one of these threats do you think interferes with the workplace of the time?
I feel like economic crisis, just because work has to do with money, and if there's like cash shortages or like bankruptcies and like scandals like that, then it just kind of messes with the whole system.
Yeah, and also I think public perception would be pretty bad as well, because if you have a bad rap and people find out that you've been cheating them or that you've been dishonest with them, then your business also falls along with the economics, which kind of go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, I'm a HR major, so the human resources one was definitely one that I could foresee being an issue in my career. Just because, and that also ties strongly in with the whole ethical debate because, as a HR rep, like that is something that's ethic is kind of your thing. It's basically your decision. So yeah, that one, like the workplace violence and like strikes and just, people getting sensitive over things and that would, I don't think that would necessarily result in a huge crisis. Like, maybe unless as an HR rep that I made the wrong decision and then it makes like the headlines or something of like, girl fired for blah, blah, blah. But I don't foresee it being like a huge crisis, nothing like a natural disaster or anything like that.
I feel like these crises like lead into each other. Like that HR one could lead into like a public perception one.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that at least tie into each other in one way or another. They all have something to do with one another.
Yeah, for me, I think was public perception. Because I work for a Christian ministry, and it's just like basically the way anyone your organization's going to fall is if people have bad perceptions of you because you're held to such a high standard, and so if your employees don't act with a certain conduct, it can really like corrupt it from the ground up. And so I was looking at because the prompt was talking about how it said we were participating in the pre-crisis planning. And so the three things that like the book was talking about were the human biases, the institutional failures, and the special interests. And so those are like three ways that you can prevent possible risk of these things from happening. And so like with human biases, like one thing I thought of was in my job is that if we just assume that like people just because they perform highly that they're doing well spiritually or emotionally or whatever. If we just assume that, that can lead to a lot of failures because there's a lot of there's a pastor named Mark Driscoll. Last year, he was a very successful pastor. It's a huge church, all this stuff. Just got caught for he was like cheating book sales or something like that, and so his whole ministry fell under and plummeted and stuff like that. And so it's hard because you can't just assume someone is just right just because off their performance or off of maybe they're a friend of mine because that it could end up being really bad under the surface. And so. Out of those three, which one do you guys think is like the most important to prevent? The human biases, the institutional failures, or the special interests?
Or what was the third one?
The special interest. So that goes with like it goes kind of like with human biases, but it's more of like not having a almost like a bias with a group or something like that. I have to look it up again.
I mean, I definitely think special interest, or like the self-interest or whatever, that's a hard one. I think everyone wants to benefit themselves. I mean, I think that's just human nature to do. So when you are faced in a situation, in a crisis situation, to reject that natural instinct, I think is very difficult.
Yeah, agreed.
That is tough.
I thought for the pre-planning, though, this was kind of interesting because I always go back to this, but I'm planning an event on campus. So one of the things we have to do is like an incident plan report, and it's this huge, like, thick binder almost of like every single thing that could go wrong with the event and what we have planned to back it up with. And it's like so insane and it's so crazy, but it's a lot of like the stuff that they talk about in here. And there was one section I don't remember, but it like goes through and lists everything that you should have in like a crisis plan. So it's kind of funny like checking that with like what I have now, but like, there are things that you don't even think about. Like we have to have an ambulance on site the night of the event to make sure that if anything ever happens, like we have an ambulance on site, and we have to have so many emergency exits per person that's there. And like for every person that we allow a ticket, there's like a square footage radius on the field that we have to measure out to make sure that like if we were all standing here, how much room would each person have, and like how would that work? And it's it's just crazy things like that. And then also to think, because it's a concert and it's going to be outside, so if it rains that day, like which isn't a crisis, it's not like the end of the world, but it's like what is it that we have planned so that students will still come and that the performers are able to still perform and not get hurt and things like that. So I thought that was kind of interesting that I mean, this is what they did is obviously way larger scale than like just an ASU event, but
Yeah.
it definitely still pertains to like even small scale things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Because there's just so many different things that could like possibly go wrong. Like if somebody just like, has an allergic reaction to some food that you're selling in the stands and like passes out at an ambulance. It's just like random things so you don't have lawsuits and stuff. So that's really interesting that you're planning that and how like just you have to plan so much stuff because you never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, so tedious.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's crazy. And I mean, it's interesting though. And I thought another thing that was cool is the wheel of crisis. I don't know if you guys read that part, but it was like build a wheel complete with a spinner and like list all the different types of crises that a company could encounter. And it's like that is dedication. Like that is something that I feel like you would never go under because you have a wheel with every possibility and they like spin it and people like act out this crisis. And like that, I mean, you are set. I feel like that is all you need to like
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
plan.
Yeah, that goes along with experience and how long you've been there, because then the longer you've been there, the more tragedies or whatever you've seen, so then you can account for them in the future. I mean, that all has to do with your past, I would think.
Yeah, because there's so many different things, the more time you've been able to experience things, the more possible outcomes you could have saw. That's a good point.
Yeah, it'd be impossible to think of every situation that could possibly happen, no matter what. It would just be impossible. You never know what could happen or what may happen or.
I used to work for a custodian position at a school. And like when you fix a problem, you can't just focus on a lot of custodians. They'll just like duct tape a pipe or something, something to solve the problem or just there. But like you have to think kind of outside the box, like okay, what other outside factors could happen? Like, is this stable enough to hold it over time, or do we need to get something else? Do we get a plumber to come fix it? And so it's a lot of just not just fixing the solution for the moment, and that may fix it for a while, but it's like preventing any other outside things coming. So you could like put a special kind of metal, another kind of metal put back on it to fix it up and stuff, and just things like that.
Yeah. I think that there are definitely things too, like you were saying, Garrett, with experience that you realize what's more common, because like off the wall things can happen at any point in time to anyone, like whether you're experienced or not. But like with experience, you tend to know like generally. So like for Devilpalooza, generally our biggest crisis for Devilpalooza is people just show up so drunk. So like that's what we're prepared for. You know what I mean? It's like that you are just so drunk you can't even manage yourself. So like how do we help you then? You're now in our care. Like you're now under like our reign. So what do we do now? It's generally our main concern isn't necessarily a hurricane coming to Phoenix, but like, you know what I mean? So it's definitely I think planning for something that's more realistic is definitely important too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Do
I
you
feel
have
like
any
this
final
chapter
thoughts?
really- Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, do we have any final thoughts? We're at our time.
Not really, no. I was gonna say the last part. I thought was kind of interesting how they talked about leaders who like put themselves in life or death situations. I thought that was a little. I mean, that was intense.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
Yeah, with that, you always think about that guy that jumps on the bomb, you know, on the grenade or whatever, and saves all
Yeah.
the dudes. You know, that's the ones I think of, but.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for helping me out and doing 2 weeks ahead. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Wait, can we turn this off live? I have a few questions.
Yeah, hold on. I'll just make another link real quick, because I
Okay.
think it ends this one, so I'll make a new one real fast.
Okay.
Cool.